Crystal is a nice young woman, almost the same age as my oldest daughter at 35. I'd met her several times at events at the school where my wife teaches. I knew my wife and Crystal talked frequently, and I had unfortunately been caught up in the mess of her divorce. From what I'd heard, her ex was a real piece of work, a class jerk who wanted to play the field while he was out of town. When he got caught, instead of owning up to it, he tried to blame her. He accused her of not being interesting enough in bed, not being loving enough, not attractive enough, and being too bitchy when he was home, generally making it all about her failings instead of his. Why am I telling you all this? Because it's the Friday night before opening day of deer season, and I'm on my way to pick her up instead of heading to our cabin with my wife. Nearly a dozen years ago, we had the chance to buy 200 acres of Missouri oak and pine woods at a fantastic price. Since then, we've spent hundreds of hours building a little weekend cabin, cutting ATV trails, and clearing areas for food plots. In my opinion, we've done a great job of turning it into a nice little deer hunting place. Normally, this would be a trip I shared with my wife, as we've done for so many years, but this year, things got turned upside down. When she announced over dinner a few weeks ago that she would miss the first weekend, she was being sent to the state capitol, which we jokingly called the Big House, for a series of meetings on the current state of the educational reform program. I guess it was an honor to be asked, but to me, it was an inconvenience. Personally, I would have just gone hunting alone, something I've done many times over the years. However, having just recovered from a small cardiac event, my wife didn't want me in the woods alone all weekend. Despite my protest, she arranged for me to take Crystal and give her her first deer hunt. Crystal knew how to shoot, or so I was told, but had never had the chance to go deer hunting. Oh yeah, did I mention that besides this being the first day of deer season, it's also my birthday? So, my wife would be gone for that as well. Anyway, getting back to the moment. I pulled into Crystal's driveway and unceremoniously honked my horn. Not my usual style, but it was what I'd been instructed to do. Within moments, the front door opened, emitting a rectangular shaft of light that framed the young woman, who was loaded down with a small ton of gear. Resigned to my role as instructor and guide, I climbed out to help her carry her stuff to the truck. To say she was talkative would be like describing Mount Everest as a hill. She didn't stop talking, or even pause to let me get a word in during the entire hour-long drive to the cabin. Bouncy, happy, bubbly. These were a few of the terms that applied to her tonight. This was quite a contrast from the sullen, quiet, withdrawn young woman my wife had been describing over the past few months. Not that I'm complaining, I'd much rather have her upbeat than despondent, especially when we'd be sitting together for hours in a little 6x4-foot blind. We arrived at the cabin around 9, and I set to work opening up, turning on the power, water, and of course, the heat. It might only get down to 50 tonight, but at 0 dark 30, it's still nice to wake up to warmth, instead of feeling like you're in a tent. By 9:30, I had a cozy fire going in the stove, and the blowers pushing warm air into the main room. I had already shown Crystal to the loft, which would serve as her bedroom, and she was busy up there, rustling around and getting her gear ready for the morning. Meanwhile, I turned on the satellite receiver and settled in to watch the end of an old war movie. "Okay to use the shower," she called down from upstairs. "Sure, help yourself," I replied, having already shown her where the only bathroom was. I designed the cabin to be efficient, with only a wood stove for heat, since we were off-grid with only solar and a backup generator for power. The bathroom had two large sliding doors that came together to form one corner of the room, one leading to the bedroom and the other to the great room, where I was relaxing. When open, the doors allowed warm air to circulate into the bedroom and bathroom. When closed, mock. They provided privacy to both rooms. It was rather ingenious, if I do say so myself. "Holy shit," I mumbled to myself as Crystal descended the spiral staircase next to the sofa I was sitting on. She wore nothing but a small towel that barely covered from the top of her breast to the bottom of her ass cheeks. She circled her way down the stairs and walked the short distance to the bathroom, the bottom of her ass cheeks peeking out from under the towel. She turned to face me to slide the door to the great room closed, nearly dropping her soap and shampoo as she tried to hold them along with her towel and close the door simultaneously. For her husband to even imply she wasn't beautiful was criminal. I shook my head to clear the image and tried to concentrate on the movie. The sound of water starting in the shower made my mind imagine her standing naked just on the other side of the door. It would be so easy for me to just step over there and damn, what was I thinking? This is my wife's friend. I'm supposed to be teaching her hunting, not lusting after her body. Only I scolded myself more as I listened to her softly singing in the shower. After a few minutes, the singing stopped, and all I could hear was the water running. I wasn't worried about her running out of hot water since we had an instant heater, but I was surprised at how long it was taking her. I was glad she had decided to shower tonight instead of in the morning. Oh fuck. I heard her moan over the sound of the water. My brain didn't have to work too hard to picture what she was doing now, and it wasn't washing her hair. Oh God, yes, that's it. Right there. Oh damn. I wondered if she realized how well that was transmitting through the thin shower stall walls and out into the great room. Finally, the water shut off, and I could hear her humming to herself again as she must have been drying off. I was completely lost in my mental fantasy of what she looked like in there, naked. Yeah, you're right. I am one horny sob that has a lot to do with my still active libido and my wife's general lack of interest. It's not really her fault. When they remove the parts that make those hormones, it makes it hard to be interested, which is more my problem than hers. We love each other, but the mismatch over the last few years has caused its share of arguments. We're still trying to figure out how to make it work and what I need to do to encourage her to want it more. Once every 4 to 6 weeks sucks. Bedtime now is more about sleeping than being intimate in any way. Much better, she said, pushing the door open, holding the towel partly in front of her body as she walked toward the stairs and me. Part of the towel covered her breasts. Another part was used to rub her wet hair, and the rest was draped over the juncture of her legs, leaving her sides and back exposed. She stepped onto the stairs and started climbing, while I did my best and failed to not look at her mostly naked body. I was almost thankful when she stepped off the top of the stairs and out of my view. You know, I really appreciate your wife inviting me out here. I think I'm going to have a fantastic time, she said as she wound down the stairs again, this time in a pair of navy blue micro shorts and a white cut-off shirt that wasn't quite long enough. She stepped off the stairs and crossed in front of me, going just far enough to drop down onto the sofa next to me, holding what looked like an empty peanut butter jar. Yeah, should be a fun day tomorrow, I answered awkwardly. You're not the bashful type, are you? I mean, I can go somewhere else and do this if you are, she said sweetly. Huh? No, I'm not bashful in general, I answered, not entirely sure what she was talking about. Good, she said, opening the peanut butter jar and setting the lid aside. Then, very nonchalantly, she lifted her shirt over her left breast, completely exposing it. I sat and stared, unsure what to do or say as she slowly milked her breast into the jar. Lindsay told me she breastfed all of your kids and how supportive you were of it. My husband said it was gross. Yeah, we did, I answered, still staring at her bare breast in her hand. I guess back then it was pretty well accepted, but society is swinging the other way again, making it harder to breastfeed. The only way I can do it is to express milk while I'm at work. Lindsay said you used to help her with that too. What? That expressing milk. Yeah, I did it a few times, I replied. I bet she really liked that, Crystal said softly, leaning forward slightly to squeeze more streams into the jar. I always thought she did, I said, not even trying to hide where I was staring. I wish someone would do that for me. My husband would never do anything like that for me. Sorry, I mumbled as she moved the jar to the sofa between her legs and pulled her crop top over her head, leaving her completely bare above the waist. Would you, do that for me? Just this once. I'd kind of like to see how it feels. Huh? I asked in shock. Just express some milk for me. I'm sure Lindsay wouldn't mind. It's just milk, right? I don't think I began to protest, quite certain that my wife would object to me handling another woman's breasts, especially a friend of hers. Oh, I'm sure she wouldn't mind, Crystal said, picking the jar up from between her legs and leaning over my lap, resting on me with her left arm between the arm of the sofa and my left leg, her bare back pressing against my stomach. There, now you can just reach over me and do my other side, she said softly. Crystal, I started to protest. This really isn't appropriate. Oh, phew, it'll be fine. You're just going to squeeze a little milk from my breast. No, we're certainly not doing anything like that, I mumbled, shocked that she would even suggest something like that. Good. Then here, she said, reaching for my hand, still resting on the sofa behind her, pulling it over her body and up to her breast. She placed it gently on her bare skin and then let my hand go. Without my brain really telling it to, my hand squeezed her breast, spraying several fine streams of her milk toward the jar and my legs. Oh, that does feel different. She cooed softly as my hand squeezed again. I sighed, hoping that this wouldn't get back to Lindsay, as I began to more methodically massage her breast. You have such strong but tender hands. I can't even begin to tell you how nice it feels to have you do this. As long as you don't tell Lindsay, I answered her. Trust me, I'm sure she wouldn't mind at all, but if you insist, I won't say a word about it. Good. Because I have no doubt she'd kill me for this, I replied, as I continued to squeeze her soft breast, adding more and more to the jar. I think that's good enough, she said gently, reaching for my hand and pulling it from her breast. She slid it down her body and let it rest on her firm, flat stomach, inches from the waistband of her shorts, while she capped the jar of milk and wedged it in the sofa next to me. She turned her head to look up at me, and then wiggled herself around on my lap, rolling over to face me, her breast pressed against me. She reached for my hand again, pulling it down and pressing my palm flat to her stomach. Having you do that, it kind of turned me on, she said as she let go of my hand and moved hers down lower, unsnapping her shorts with a soft tip sound. I heard the zipper slowly pull down, the little teeth clacking apart as she inched it down, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. Crystal, I started. She reached up and touched her finger to my lips. Don't say anything. I just want to enjoy feeling you holding me. It's been a long time since anyone has touched me like you've been doing. She moved her fingers from my lips and lowered her hand back to her shorts, pushing them down her hip, and then lifting herself to work them over her firm ass before pushing them down. We both know you were looking at me before, so don't pretend you didn't see what I look like down there, she added as she worked her shorts down her legs until she could bend them up and push them the rest of the way off, leaving her naked on my lap. I didn't mean to. I started to quietly protest, stopped by her fingers once again touching my lips. No need to explain. I knew what you'd be able to see if you wanted to. I just wanted to know if I was good enough looking for you to want to. You liked how it looked. This is really wrong, I said again. You're my wife's friend. I shouldn't be doing this. Trust me. She isn't going to know, and right now I really want to feel your hand a bit lower than it is right now, she said softly, reaching for my wrist and pushing my hand down lower. She lifted one leg and hooked her foot on the top edge of the sofa so her legs were spread and guided my hand to the juncture of her legs. Crystal? Oh, don't stop now, please. I just want to feel someone else touching me for a change. She pleaded. So nice. I love how gently you are with your fingers, but how strong and firm your touch is. Lindsay is so lucky. Yeah, and I'm so fucking dead, I mumbled. She moved her hand to the waistband of my sweatpants and pulled out. They made sweet love. I sat for a while longer, staring at the TV, but barely even noticed the movie had long since ended. Finally, I turned the light off and went to bed, pulling on a pair of flannel pajamas before crawling under the covers. When it came, or more accurately, the alarm started its incessant beeping, demanding that I get up and shut it off, which I did. I crawled out of bed and padded to the bathroom. After taking care of my morning business, I returned to the bedroom to dress. It was only after I had undressed that I remembered I wasn't alone, so I closed the bedroom and bathroom door in case she decided to come down before I was dressed. Since it was supposed to be a chilly morning, with unseasonably warm temperatures later in the day, I chose a pair of lightweight thermal underwear before pulling on my typical camouflage hunting clothes. Dressed in with my boots on, I headed to the kitchen, calling up to the loft for Crystal to get up. "Okay," she called sleepily. I heard her feet on the stairs and turned to see her coming down, rubbing the sleep from her eyes as she descended the circular staircase completely naked. Her breast, clearly engorged with milk, seemed even bigger than the night before as they bounced and swayed on her chest. "Be there for breakfast in a minute," she yawned as she headed to the bathroom, not bothering to close the door, though I couldn't really see anything from the kitchen anyway. I had bacon frying in the pan as she came out to the kitchen, still naked. Itawai. She pulled the peanut butter jar from the fridge and sat on one of the kitchen chairs, leaning herself over slightly as she started expressing milk into the container from her right breast. "You could put clothes on," I said, with a bit of a frown as I turned the bacon. "You don't like seeing me naked?" she asked without looking up at me. "I didn't say that." "Then you do like seeing me naked?" "Yeah, okay, but close? Why? I don't wear any at home once the girls have gone to bed. This isn't home." "No. I suppose if you really don't want me naked, I can put something on." "No point now. Breakfast will be ready in a minute, but you'll want to dress warm to go out. If you go like that, you'll freeze your ass off." "Yeah, I've got plenty of warm clothes," she said, switching to the other breast, which was now visibly larger than the right. I took the bacon off the burner and moved another pan onto it, pouring mixed eggs into it too. Fry scrambled eggs. By the time they were done, so was she. It was almost a relief when she got up and walked naked to the stairs and up them too. "Get dressed while I got the ATV out of the shed and got it ready to go." "All set?" I asked 10 minutes later when she came out of the cabin, her breath making small clouds with each breath in the crisp morning air. "I think so. Gun, gear, ammo. Check, check, and check," she said with a smile. "All set." I climbed into the ATV, my gear already secured, and held a hand out for her. She stepped onto the footrest and swung over the seat behind me, holding onto her gun and pack with one hand. I took her gun and dropped it into the second gun holder and sat down, ready for the ride to the back end of the property and the stand I picked for today. It was one of the best spots, overlooking a small pond and a large food plot. It didn't matter if it rained or was sunny, since I'd built a permanent blind on stilts, big enough for two, intending it to be used with my granddaughter when she got old enough to hunt. It was a chilly ride, Crystal holding herself tightly against me for warmth and as a wind block, as I drove down the trails at a good 15 miles an hour in the darkness. I stopped 100 yards or so from where we were going to hunt and shut down the ATV. "We walked from here," I said, pulling her rifle from the holder and holding it out. "How far?" "Only 100 yards or so. Don't want to run right onto the food plot and scare the deer all away." "Oh, okay." "Do they not like the ATV?" "It's not a natural predator, but the bigger, wearier bucks will smell it and go around," I said as I started pulling my pack off the front carrier. I flicked on a red headlamp and turned the ATV headlights off, dousing us in darkness for a few moments until our eyes started to adjust. We walked down the path to the food plot, across it, and then I helped her climb up the 12 feet into the stand. It wasn't fancy. 2x4s with a wood floor and metal sides and top. On a crisp morning like this, it could be pretty chilly inside, but our body heat would soon start taking the nip out of the air inside the 6-foot by 4-foot building. When the sun came up, it had warmed up considerably, having intentionally built it with dark brown sides and roof to let the sun warm it up in the cold fall days. We settled in, I opened the windows, and we waited for the sun to make its appearance on the horizon. I sat with my eyes closed, not quite sleeping, but not really awake for nearly half an hour, before the sun started to brighten the eastern sky. Slowly, the sky changed from black to deep purple to dark blue with a tinge of orange, and finally to light blue as the sun struggled its way up toward the treetops. The weather was perfect, and the location was known to be good. All we had to do was see a deer. I didn't even have my gun cocked. This trip was about coaching Crystal, so that was my focus. "It's pretty out here," she whispered, Yep, all we need now is a deer. I whispered back. This is a good spot. I've taken almost a dozen deer out of this clearing. They come for the pond water. Oh, she answered quietly. We sat without talking for almost an hour before I saw the first signs of movement for the morning. It was dead still, no wind at all to cause the leaves to rustle, so seeing a slight movement, about 100 yards away through the brown leaves instantly drew my attention. There, I whispered to Crystal, pointing toward the deer slowly, making its way toward the food plot. It was a small buck. Its four-point antlers thin and spiky compared to a more mature buck. Young bucks seem to be a bit more stupid than older, more experienced bucks. If they live long enough, they learn not to do dumb stuff like wander right out into the middle of an open food plot during gun season. How do they know it's gun season, you ask? I really don't know, but they always do. Crystal raised her gun, gently pushing it out the front window of the blind, aiming down the length of the plot toward the buck as she settled herself on the gun for the shot. She adjusted her position several times, trying to get a good sight picture in her scope. Wait for him to turn broadside. See how he's sniffing the air. He's looking for a doe, and he thinks he smells one. I advised in a low voice. Predictable. She whispered back, patiently waiting for the buck to make its move. While a head-on shot can be effective, there's no point in ruining a lot of good meat with a shot down through his guts. Okay, there he goes. Get ready. When you have a good broadside shot, aim at that point behind the shoulder and press the trigger, I instructed. Got it. She whispered back as the deer started to turn to its right, exposing its side to us as it began walking toward and I said the worry. Thicket on the rim of the pond. Anytime, I whispered, not wanting her to miss the opportunity. Click. That's all I heard. No bang, no recoil of her body, no smoke out of the barrel of the gun. Just one loud click. Fuck. Crystal swore, pulling the gun in and cocking the lever to chamber a bullet. By the time she got the gun out the window again, the deer had disappeared behind the thicket, and any chance of a shot was gone as well. So, you didn't cock your gun when we got settled in? I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. I thought I did, she said with a frown. Okay, I replied with a sigh, attempting to remain patient. Maybe you'll come back. I hope so, she exclaimed, pulling her gun in and setting it down again. Oops, she added sheepishly. Yeah, I agreed, sitting back and sighing again. I wouldn't personally have harvested that deer, but for a first-time hunter, anything. Brown is a good target. We sat silently for about 10 minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Suddenly she stood up, or as much as you can in the low ceiling to blind, and started peeling off her coat. You okay? I asked. I thought you said it was going to be cold. It's getting flat hot in here. Yeah, probably up over 70 in here already, with the sun hitting us now. Not that warm out there, though, I guarantee. But I'm not sitting out there, she said quietly, dropping her jacket on the ground, and then sitting down again, unlacing her boots. What are you doing? I hissed quietly. Getting rid of these long johns. I'm roasting, she whispered back as she pulled one boot off. The second boot followed suit quickly, and she stood up with her head bent down to avoid hitting the metal roof. She undid the front of her camo pants and pushed them down, sliding them off her legs, before sitting back down. After discarding her pants, she stood up again and began pushing her green long underwear down over her hips and legs. I watched, transfixed, as she peeled the fabric off, revealing more and more of her skin, until she sat naked on the bench next to me. There, she exclaimed with a giggle, naked co-ed hunting. Yeah, I agreed, unable to tear my gaze away from her. So she prompted, so what? I asked, puzzled. So you gonna, she clarified, get undressed. I mean, the deer can't see us in here, and it's not like anyone else will either. What, get naked? I echoed, incredulous. It wouldn't be co-ed naked hunting if you weren't naked too. She teased, flashing me a grin. Come on. I hesitated, still trying to process her suggestion. This is so inappropriate, I muttered under my breath. Oh, no more so than me lying on your lap while you squeezed milk from my tits. I'd say those were much more inappropriate than being naked with me and a deer blind. She retorted. Like I said, I sighed. Come on, you wouldn't want me to tell your wife that you were playing with my tits now, would you? She teased, a mischievous glint in her eyes. You wouldn't? I protested. Besides, that was your idea. You really think she'd care whose idea it was? Besides, who do you think she'll believe? You saying it was my idea, or me saying you undressed me and played with me while I was sleeping? She countered with a smirk. You wouldn't? I might, but then I might not. I suppose it wouldn't be too hard to convince me not to say anything, she said thoughtfully, turning to look at me with a crooked little grin. So, if I understand correctly, if I get naked with you, you won't tell her that I got naked with you. Is that about right? I asked, trying to clarify. Something like that, she replied, the grin never leaving her face. I sighed heavily. Fine. I'm already in deep water, so what's a little more? That's the spirit, she exclaimed brightly, as I began unlacing my boots. In a matter of minutes I had shed all my clothes, and Crystal tossed each item out the window, leaving us both naked with only our boots on. There. Now it's really naked co-ed hunting, she giggled. So it would seem, I responded dryly. She stood up as much as she could in the low ceiling to blind. Swiveling around, she sat on my lap, her back against my chest, and swung her right leg over mine. Getting back, she pressed against me, guiding my hands up to her breasts. I really need to have some milk expressed. I'd much rather you do it for me.
I see.
So, all this, getting naked, was to get me to play with your tits? I asked incredulously. More or less, she replied with a shrug. As we began to engage in intimate activities, I couldn't help but feel conflicted. Here I was, cheating on my wife not once, but twice, and enjoying it. What did that say about me as a person and as a husband? I knew I needed to tell her. But how? And how could I ensure that Crystal didn't face any repercussions? My marriage was at risk, and I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and uncertainty. I think we need to go in, I said abruptly, breaking the silence. Okay, but our clothes are out there, Crystal pointed out, gesturing towards the window. You threw them out so you can go get them. I chuckled weakly. But it's cold out there. I'll freeze my ass off, she protested. If that's the price we have to pay, then so be it, I replied solemnly. It took a couple of minutes, but Crystal finally mustered the courage to retrieve our clothes. She tossed them up into the blind through the door and then climbed in herself, shivering from the still chilly air. It wasn't much warmer inside, especially since she had left the door open while retrieving our stuff. She moved to sit on my lap again, while it's time to see something seeking warmth, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. We sat like that for several minutes, my hands gently caressing her body until she broke the silence with a whispered comment. You keep that up, and you're gonna have to love me again, she teased. Oh, sorry, I mumbled, quickly retracting my hands to her waist. I'm not, she replied, reaching for my hands and guiding them back to her breasts. I was enjoying it, just saying that it's getting me all turned on again. You might have to love me again when we get back. I'm not sure that's a good idea. We're already in trouble as it is, I responded cautiously. Maybe, maybe not, she giggled mischievously. Come on, I need a shower, and so do you. I wonder if we can both fit in that little shower stall at once. Lindsay and I answered before realizing what I had said. Good, let's go then, she exclaimed, pulling me up from the bench and leading the way to the shower, leaving me wondering how I had ended up in this situation and what the consequences would be. We dressed to head back inside, skipping the underwear since it seemed redundant given our plans. The trip back on the ATV was quiet, with both of us lost in our own thoughts. When we parked in front of the cabin, the warmth from the wood stove felt comforting. As we carried our gear inside, Crystal undressed a game-o and seemingly eager for more. Instead of approaching me, she headed up the stairs to the loft. Come on, I have something for you up here, she called out as she ascended the spiral staircase. Sure, I replied, following her lead. I was still clad in my boots and pants, but nothing else. She was waiting by the bed, a mischievous smile on her face and her hands behind her. Back. Here, she exclaimed as I approached, handing me a small blue envelope. Read it. I turned it over to see 2MLH written on the front in my wife's distinctively feminine handwriting. Opening the envelope, I pulled out a birthday card. To my sweet, loving husband, it said on the front. Opening it, I read the pre-printed message. If only I could find the way to tell you how wonderful and special you are. You are one of a kind, and I'll love you forever. Below that was her note. I've watched too many of our friends divorce late in life because of their sex lives. I don't want that to happen to us. You are too good to me in so many ways that I'm not willing to lose you to our sexual incompatibility. I know eventually we will be together on that again, but for now I have to find a way to keep you happy. So, for this day, your birthday, my gift to you is Crystal. Enjoy whatever you wish with her. You have my blessing on whatever you do. All I ask is that you save your love for me and that at the end of the weekend you answer. But one question. Did you enjoy my present? I don't want to know more than that. I love you. Happy birthday. So last night, today you knew this all along. Yep, for weeks now. So want to go take that shower? There are a lot of hours and ways to spend interesting time in bed yet today. I looked down at the card again and shook my head in wonder. Might as well. Do you come with cake too? You'll have to wait till later to find out, she said as she stepped towards me, her arms out. She pressed her soft tits against my chest and her lips to mine for a long, sensual kiss. Shower? She whispered questioningly as she broke the minutes-long kiss. Might as well. I whispered back, wondering just how I was going to thank my wife for such an incredible gift. The end.